She was just a quiet passenger in old jeans, hiding her past as the president's pilot. When the plane systems failed at 35,000 feet, everything changed. Military control saw her name and called her secret code name. Now Air Force One itself was coming to help save the flight. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Sarah Chin settled into seat 22C, pulling her faded baseball cap lower over her eyes. The worn jeans and old sneakers were a far cry from her usual attire, but that was exactly the point. For the first time in 12 years she was flying as a passenger, not as the pilot responsible for the most important aircraft in the world. The flight attendant smiled warmly as she passed by. First time flying to Washington? Not exactly, Sarah replied with a gentle smile. But it's been a while since I visited as a tourist. The young man in the seat beside her, a college student named Marcus, was glued to his phone, occasionally glancing out the window with excitement. I'm going to see the White House, he said eagerly. Have you ever been inside? Sarah's lips curved slightly. Once or twice, she said quietly. What Marcus didn't know was that the woman sitting next to him had seen the White House from angles most people never would, from the cockpit of Air Force One, landing on the South Lawn dozens of times. For 8 years, Colonel Sarah Phoenix Chin had been the personal pilot for the President of the United States, one of only a handful of people entrusted with flying the nation's most secure aircraft. Her call sign, Phoenix, had been earned during her early days as an F-16 fighter pilot, when she'd brought a badly damaged aircraft home safely after a training accident that should have been fatal. Rising from the ashes, her commander had said. The name stuck, and it followed her through an extraordinary career that culminated in becoming the youngest person ever to command the Presidential Airlift Group. 3 months ago, Sarah had retired from the Air Force at 42, ready for a quieter life. This trip to D.C. was supposed to be her first real vacation. Visiting monuments as a tourist, not as the pilot responsible for bringing the president home safely. As United Flight 642 pushed back from the gate at Denver International Airport, Sarah found herself instinctively monitoring the engine sounds, the smoothness of the taxi, the professional efficiency of the crew. Old habits died hard. You seem pretty calm for someone flying, Marcus observed as they lined up for takeoff. I've flown a lot, Sarah said simply, not mentioning that she'd logged over 8,000 flight hours, including some of the most dangerous missions in modern aviation history. The takeoff was smooth, and as they climbed through the clouds into bright sunshine, Sarah finally began to relax. She opened a book, ordered coffee, and allowed herself to enjoy the simple pleasure of being a passenger. For 2 hours everything was perfect. Then the warning chimes sounded in the cockpit. Captain David Martinez stared at his instrument panel in disbelief. Warning lights were illuminating in a pattern he'd never seen in 20 years of flying. Lisa, are you seeing this? He asked his first officer. First Officer Lisa Thompson's face went pale. Hydraulic System 1 is showing failure. And, oh God, System 2 is fluctuating. Martinez's hands tightened on the controls. Losing one hydraulic system was manageable. Losing 2 was a nightmare scenario. Run the emergency checklist. As Thompson worked through the procedures, more warnings appeared. Flight control systems were becoming erratic. The aircraft began to respond sluggishly to control inputs. Denver Center, United 642 declaring an emergency, Martinez transmitted, his voice steady despite the fear creeping up his spine. We have multiple hydraulic failures and are experiencing flight control difficulties. United 642, Denver Center copies your emergency. State your intentions. We need immediate vectors to the nearest suitable airport. I'm not sure how long we can maintain controlled flight. In the passenger cabin, people began to notice something was wrong. The aircraft's movements became unusual, small jerks and corrections that felt different from normal turbulence. Sarah's trained ear picked up the change in engine sounds as the pilots adjusted power settings to compensate for control problems. She closed her book slowly, her mind already shifting into the analytical mode that had served her through countless emergencies. The intercom crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Martinez. We're experiencing some technical difficulties and will be diverting to the nearest airport. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Marcus's eyes widened with fear. Technical difficulties? That doesn't sound good. Sarah's calm voice steadied him. The crew knows what they're doing. Stay calm and follow their instructions. But privately, Sarah was analyzing every sound, every movement of the aircraft. Her experience told her this was serious, more serious than the captain was letting on. 2,000 miles away in the underground command center at NORAD headquarters in Colorado, Major James Rodriguez was monitoring the emergency declaration from United 642. A commercial aircraft with control problems wasn't unusual, but this particular emergency had occurred at exactly the wrong time. "Sir," he reported to Colonel Amanda Foster, "we have a commercial emergency that may conflict with Eagle's flight path." Colonel Foster looked up sharply. Eagle was the Secret Service code name for President Katherine Morrison, who was scheduled to depart Andrews Air Force Base in less than 30 minutes aboard Air Force One for a critical NATO summit in Brussels. What's the nature of the emergency? Multiple hydraulic failures, possible loss of flight control. The aircraft is having difficulty maintaining stable flight, and their projected emergency descent path crosses Eagle's departure corridor. Foster made a quick decision. Scramble F-22s to escort the emergency aircraft and ensure separation. And get me a complete passenger manifest. I want to know exactly who's on that plane. This was standard security protocol. Any aircraft that might come near the president's flight path was scrutinized carefully. But what the NORAD team discovered in the manifest would change everything. Lieutenant Sarah Kim was reviewing the passenger list when she froze, her eyes widening. "Colonel Foster, you need to see this." "What is it?" "Seat 22C. Passenger name, Sarah Chin. Colonel Sarah Chin, retired." Foster's breath caught. Every senior military officer knew that name. Sarah Phoenix Chin had been legendary even before becoming the president's pilot. The fighter pilot who'd saved her aircraft against impossible odds, the test pilot who'd helped develop new aviation systems, and finally the commander who'd flown Air Force One through more dangerous situations than any pilot in history. "Are we certain it's her?" "Confirmed, ma'am. Colonel Sarah Chin, call sign Phoenix, retired from the Presidential Airlift Group 3 months ago." Foster immediately understood the implications. A commercial aircraft in serious trouble was carrying one of the most skilled pilots in American history, someone who dealt with aircraft emergencies while responsible for the president's life. She reached for the secure phone. "Give me the White House. The president needs to know about this immediately." Aboard United 642, Captain Martinez was fighting to keep the aircraft under control. More systems were failing, and the flight controls were becoming increasingly unresponsive. "We're losing it," Thompson said quietly. "I don't know if we can make it to an airport." It was then that a voice crackled over the radio on a secure military frequency that the aircraft's systems could monitor. "United 642, this is NORAD Command. We understand you have Colonel Sarah Chin aboard your aircraft. We need to speak with Phoenix immediately." In seat 22C, Sarah's head snapped up. Her call sign. Her military call sign that hadn't been used since her retirement. How did they know? Marcus stared at her. "Did they just call you Phoenix? Like, the military Phoenix?" Before Sarah could answer, Captain Martinez's voice came over the intercom, this time directed specifically at her. "Colonel Chin, this is Captain Martinez. If you're aboard, we desperately need your help in the cockpit. Please come forward immediately." Every passenger within earshot turned to stare at the woman in the baseball cap and faded jeans. The quiet tourist was suddenly something else entirely. Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt and stood. The flight attendant rushed over, eyes wide. "Ma'am, are you really?" "I'm a pilot," Sarah said simply. "And they need help." As she made her way forward, she could hear the whispers spreading through the cabin. A retired colonel. The president's pilot. Phoenix. When Sarah entered the cockpit, she immediately assessed the situation with the trained eye of someone who dealt with emergencies at the highest level. The instrument panel told her everything. Multiple failures, erratic systems, and 2 pilots doing everything they could to keep the aircraft flying. "What have you lost?" she asked, her voice calm and authoritative. Martinez quickly briefed her. "Both hydraulic systems are gone or failing. Flight controls are intermittent. We're trying to get to Colorado Springs, but I'm not sure we'll make it." Sarah's mind raced through options, drawing on years of experience with complex aircraft systems. Air Force One had multiple redundancies and advanced systems, but the principles of flying a damaged aircraft were the same. "NORAD Command, this is Phoenix," she transmitted on the secure frequency. "I'm in the cockpit and have assessed the situation. What assets do you have available?" The response came immediately. "Phoenix, we have F-22s inbound for escort." "But ma'am, Eagle herself has requested to provide support." Sarah's heart skipped. "Eagle? President Morrison. Her former passenger, the woman she'd protected and flown safely for 8 years. Understood. I need real-time weather for Colorado Springs, complete runway data, and I need you to clear all traffic from our approach path. Also, prepare emergency services for a hard landing with possible injuries. Roger, Phoenix. All assets are being coordinated now. And ma'am? Air Force One is requesting to serve as command and control for your emergency. Martinez looked at Sarah in shock. Air Force One? For us. Sarah's expression was unreadable. The president takes care of the people who took care of her. At Andrews Air Force Base, President Morrison stood in the cabin of Air Force One, listening to updates about the emergency. When she learned that her former pilot was aboard the stricken aircraft, her decision was immediate. We're not going to Brussels, she told her Chief of Staff, Michael Torres. We're providing support for that commercial flight. Madam President, the NATO summit can wait, Morrison said firmly. Colonel Chin flew me through war zones, diplomatic emergencies, and situations that would have terrified most pilots. She never hesitated to put my safety first. Now she needs help and we're going to provide it. Torres knew better than to argue when the president used that tone. Yes, ma'am. Besides, Morrison added, looking out at the gleaming aircraft that Sarah had commanded for so many years, if anyone can save that flight, it's Phoenix. But she's going to have every resource we can give her. Air Force One began taxiing, not toward Europe, but toward the skies above Colorado, where a commercial aircraft full of frightened passengers desperately needed help. The situation aboard United 642 continued to deteriorate. More warning lights illuminated, and the aircraft's responses to control inputs became increasingly erratic. Sarah stood behind the pilots, her mind working through complex calculations. She'd landed Air Force One with partial system failures before, using techniques that were developed specifically for presidential operations, classified procedures that most pilots would never learn. Captain Martinez, she said, I'm going to teach you a technique we use for high-risk approaches. It's not standard procedure, but it will give you better control with limited hydraulics. For the next several minutes, Sarah shared knowledge that had been developed through years of protecting the president. She explained how to use differential thrust, how to anticipate the aircraft's sluggish responses, how to plan every movement several seconds in advance. Thompson stared at her. Colonel, how do you know all this? Because I've done it before, Sarah replied. In aircraft that were shot at, damaged or failing. The plane I flew had more advanced systems, but the principles are the same. The radio crackled again. Phoenix, this is Eagle. Sarah's breath caught. It was President Morrison herself, speaking directly from Air Force One. Eagle, this is Phoenix, Sarah responded, using the informal call signs they developed over years of flying together. Phoenix, we have complete weather data, advanced navigation support, and direct coordination with Colorado Springs. Air Force One is assuming command and control for your approach. What do you need? Sarah felt a wave of emotion. The full resources of the presidential aircraft, the most advanced aviation platform in the world, were being placed at her disposal to save a commercial flight. Eagle, I need continuous weather updates, backup navigation in case our systems fail further, and medical coordination for potential casualties. Also, I'll need fighter support to monitor our actual flight path since our instruments may not be reliable. You have it all, Phoenix. Bringing everyone home safely, just like you taught me to expect. Captain Martinez was speechless. The president, she's personally coordinating our emergency? She's a good person, Sarah said simply. And she understands that aviation is about bringing people home safely, no matter whose aircraft it is. As United 642 began its descent toward Colorado Springs, Sarah coordinated the approach with precision that came from years of presidential operations. She had Air Force One providing navigation data, F-22 fighters monitoring weather and reporting visual conditions, and ground teams preparing for every possible scenario. Colorado Springs Tower, United 642 heavy emergency inbound with Air Force One coordination, Sarah transmitted. The controller's voice showed his amazement. United 642 Colorado Springs Tower. All emergency equipment is standing by, all traffic is cleared, and we're honored to have Air Force One supporting this operation. The descent was challenging. Every 1,000 feet brought new control problems as air pressure changed and systems stressed further. But Sarah's calm guidance kept Martinez focused. Don't fight the aircraft, she instructed. Work with it. Anticipate its movements. You're doing great. At 10,000 feet, a hydraulic line finally burst completely, causing the aircraft to pitch violently. Martinez struggled with the controls, panic rising in his voice. Easy, Sarah's calm voice cut through his fear. Gentle corrections. Use thrust to help stabilize. You've got this. Thompson was monitoring their descent rate. We're coming in too fast. Adjust power gradually, Sarah instructed. Don't make sudden changes. The aircraft will respond, just give it time. Through the windscreen they could see Colorado Springs approaching. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, their lights flashing. F-22 fighters flew parallel to them, close enough that Sarah could see the pilots' helmets. Phoenix, Eagle, came President Morrison's voice. You're looking good. Complete the approach just like you've done 1,000 times before. Roger, Eagle, Sarah replied, her voice steady. Bringing them home. The final approach required every bit of skill Sarah had developed over her career. She talked Martinez through each step, using techniques that had been classified until this moment, methods developed specifically for landing damaged presidential aircraft. At 500 feet, start your flare early. The response will be slow. Trust the process. The runway rushed up to meet them. The aircraft was vibrating, control responses were delayed, and every second felt like an eternity. 200 feet. Ease the nose up. Power steady. You're doing perfectly. The touchdown was harder than normal, but Martinez kept the aircraft centered on the runway. As they decelerated, emergency vehicles raced alongside them. When the aircraft finally stopped, 180 passengers erupted in applause. United 642, excellent work, Colorado Springs Tower transmitted. Everyone is safe. Sarah felt her knees go weak with relief. In the passenger cabin, people were crying, hugging, thanking God and the pilots and anyone else they could think of. Air Force One flew overhead in a low pass, a traditional salute from one pilot to another. Phoenix, outstanding job as always, President Morrison transmitted. You just reminded me why I trusted you with my life for 8 years. Thank you, Eagle, Sarah replied quietly. Just doing what needed to be done. As passengers deplaned, many stopped to thank Sarah personally. Marcus, the college student who'd been sitting beside her, was among them. I can't believe I was sitting next to a legend this whole time, he said, shaking his head in amazement. Sarah smiled. I was just a tourist until I wasn't. When she stepped onto the tarmac, Air Force One was taxiing toward them. The aircraft that had been her office, her responsibility, and her pride for 8 years was here because the president had ordered it to help. The door opened and President Morrison descended the stairs personally. She walked directly to Sarah and, ignoring all protocol, pulled her into a hug. Thank you for being exactly who you've always been, the president said quietly. Within hours, news of the incident spread worldwide. The story of a retired presidential pilot who saved a commercial flight while traveling as a tourist captured international attention. Air Force One pilot saves commercial flight, read the headlines. Presidential aircraft coordinates civilian rescue, wrote aviation experts who understood how unprecedented the operation had been. But Sarah tried to deflect the attention. Captain Martinez and First Officer Thompson deserve the credit, she told reporters. They flew that aircraft and saved 180 lives. I just provided coordination. Martinez disagreed. Colonel Chin didn't just coordinate. She used resources and techniques that don't exist anywhere else in civilian aviation. Without her experience and her connection to presidential operations, we wouldn't have made it. President Morrison spoke at a press conference the next day. Colonel Chin served as my pilot for 8 years, and I trusted her with my life every time we flew. Today, she proved once again why that trust was well placed. The Federal Aviation Administration launched a full investigation into the incident. What they discovered made Sarah's performance even more remarkable. Colonel Chin had no current type rating on the Boeing 757, the lead investigator reported. She was familiar with the systems from her technical training, but she'd been flying only Air Force One for 8 years. Yet she coordinated the emergency with expertise that exceeded most airline captains. The investigation revealed that Sarah's use of Air Force One as command and control had provided capabilities never before available to a civilian emergency. The advanced communication systems, real-time data, and military coordination had been crucial to the successful outcome. The FAA and Air Force began developing new protocols based on the incident, studying how presidential flight procedures could be adapted for civilian emergencies. Colonel Chen's performance demonstrates that techniques developed for Air Force One have applications beyond presidential transport, an Air Force colonel wrote in the analysis. Her actions may change how we handle aviation emergencies. 2 weeks later, Sarah finally made it to Washington, D.C. as a tourist, though she was now recognized everywhere she went. President Morrison invited her to the White House, where they toured Air Force One together. Do you miss it? the president asked, standing in the cockpit they'd shared for so many missions. Sometimes, Sarah admitted. But I'm proud that my experience could help those people. You know, Morrison said, the job is yours if you ever want to come back. Sarah smiled. Thank you, Madam President. But I think I'll stick with retirement. Though I might choose driving over flying for my next vacation. The president laughed. I don't blame you. Though airlines are probably hoping you keep flying. You're the best backup pilot they could ask for. 6 months later, Sarah was invited to speak at the Air Force Academy. Standing before hundreds of cadets who dreamed of following in her footsteps, she shared the lessons of that day. When I got on that plane in Denver, I was just a retired tourist, she told them. But there's no such thing as being off duty when people need help. The skills we develop as military pilots don't belong to us. They belong to everyone we can help with them. The incident became a case study at the Academy, taught alongside lessons on leadership, crisis management, and the responsibility that comes with exceptional training. Cadet Jennifer Martinez, no relation to the captain, asked, Ma'am, how did you know your Air Force One experience would work on a commercial aircraft? I didn't, Sarah replied honestly. But I knew that flying is flying and pilots help pilots. When someone needs help at 35,000 feet, you use whatever skills and resources you have. 2 years later, the impact of that emergency continued to resonate through the aviation community. Captain Martinez and First Officer Thompson still flew for United, forever grateful for the day when a legend sat in their cockpit. Marcus became an aerospace engineering student inspired by meeting Sarah. And commercial airlines now had protocols for identifying and utilizing military pilots who might be traveling as passengers during emergencies. President Morrison continued to tell Sarah's story as an example of service that extends beyond retirement. Colonel Chin showed us that dedication to protecting others doesn't end when you take off the uniform. It's a lifetime commitment. At Colorado Springs Airport, a new emergency response center was dedicated in honor of the incident. It was designed to coordinate civilian and military resources during aviation crises, a permanent legacy of what had been accomplished that day. Sarah attended the dedication, where she was reunited with many who'd been part of the rescue. The F-22 pilots, the air traffic controllers, the emergency responders, and via video link from Air Force One, President Morrison herself. 3 years ago, Colonel Chin proved that American aviation, military and civilian, is strongest when we work together, the president said from somewhere over the Pacific. This facility ensures that future emergencies can be handled with the same coordination and professionalism. Today, Sarah Chin continues her quiet retirement, though she'll never again travel completely anonymously. Her name is known in aviation circles worldwide as the pilot who saved United 642. When she does fly commercially, crews often recognize her name and quietly ensure she's treated with the respect due to someone who served as the president's pilot and saved 180 lives in a single emergency. But Sarah remains modest. I was in the right place at the right time with the right experience, she tells anyone who asks. Any pilot would have done the same. Her colleagues know better. They understand that what Sarah accomplished required more than skill. It required the ability to coordinate complex resources under extreme pressure while lives hung in the balance. The passengers from United 642 never forgot the tourist in seat 22C. Many send letters of thanks, grateful for proof that heroes sometimes sit in the most ordinary places, waiting for the moment when extraordinary action is needed. And in aviation schools and training facilities across the country, the story of United Flight 642 is told as a reminder that military service doesn't end with retirement, that the most advanced resources exist to protect all Americans, and that a pilot's commitment to bringing people home safely lasts a lifetime. Sometimes, late at night in airport lounges, pilots still talk about Phoenix, the legendary Air Force One pilot who proved that you're never really off duty when people need help in the sky. She was just a tourist in seat 22C wearing a baseball cap and faded jeans. But when 180 people needed help at 35,000 feet, Sarah Phoenix Chin became exactly what she'd always been. A pilot whose skill and dedication could bring anyone home safely, no matter what aircraft she was on. And Air Force One, the symbol of presidential power, had proven it existed to serve all Americans when they needed it most.